Good morning. Thanks, Brad, for the introduction. It's my privilege to be here with you today. I'm not sure about, I think I heard beady eyes or something like that. I'm not sure what that, or weedy eyes. I'm not sure what the reference is, but certainly I do really enjoy my work with MCC. Thank you, Greendale, for your support, to MCC for your engagement, for your partnership. A few areas to name would be flipping burgers at the MCC relief sale, packing relief buckets, giving to MCC's programming for a long time, faithfully, generously, for participating in refugee sponsorship, making blankets, volunteering at the thrift stores. And I'm sure there are many, many other ways that Greendale MB community has engaged with MCC, and I am new, so I don't know all the ways. So I'm sure that if I was together with you in person today, I could take a poll throughout the congregation and say, what is your engagement with MCC? And I would learn new ways that people have partnered with MCC over the years. So thank you. Next slide. So MCC's vision and mission statement, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with it, but I will share it with you this morning if you're not familiar with it. So MCC stands for Mennonite Central Committee. It is a worldwide ministry of Anabaptist churches who shares God's love and compassion for all in the name of Christ, by responding to basic needs and working for peace and justice. MCC envisions communities worldwide in right relationship with God, with one another, and with creation. MCC's priorities in carrying out its purpose are in disaster relief, sustainable community development, and justice and peace building. MCC serves in 51 countries around the world. Next slide, please. Within those countries, we partner outside of the borders in 31 other countries. We work in 51 countries and have offices in 31 countries, partnering across the borders. Serving because we are Christ followers. And Jesus did not turn a blind eye to need, but rather, he said, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25:40. So it has been my privilege to learn more about MCC from what I knew from when I was a wee little one back in the prairies in Alberta, where my parents coordinated the MCC relief sale. All I knew then was that it was a really fun weekend, and we ran around and we brought quilts and we ate good food and we were together with the whole town and all the churches came, and it was just a moment to be gathered together. That was my memory. And I knew a little bit more throughout the years of growing up. But then MCC faded from my periphery, faded from what my goals and my focuses were. Jesus didn't, but MCC did. And I had the privilege of about 3.5 years ago when my husband Gil and our 3 daughters moved to Abbotsford to have the opportunity to think about MCC. And I had the opportunity now to serve with them for 3 years. I have been reminded of MCC. I have been reminded of the work that we do in the name of Christ, where people's need is not ignored nor forgotten. It is acknowledged, it is honored, and it is provided for. So MCC works in 3 priority areas. And in the slide, you can see that they're circles and they're joined. They are not separated, they overlap. And I think that is the beauty of what MCC is able to do as we work with local partners around the world. MCC doesn't come in and say, we are the experts. Rather, MCC finds local partners who are the experts in their context. They understand the political context. They understand the need of people. They understand how to best help their neighbors. And so MCC works together with local partners, often with churches. Whenever we can, we partner with the local church. There's many Mennonite denominations, and we partner together with them. When there are not local churches available, then we partner with other organizations that have proven their accountability, their transparency, and their commitment to the local community. In Matthew 22, 37 to 38, it says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, or with all of your heart, and all of your soul, and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." MCC responded in last November, to a natural disaster in Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. A hurricane landed, a tropical storm landed, and in this photo you will see Jose Fernandez standing on the roof of a 2-story church outside of San Pedro Sula. People sought shelter in the 2nd floor of the church because, as you can see on the other side, those are 1-story buildings, and the water had risen and washed out homes, people's livelihoods, crops. Everything that they have has been washed away, replaced by dirty water. MCC has offices or partners with the Honduran Mennonite Church, and immediately a response was set into motion with food relief, water, blankets. And MCC was able to respond immediately, not knowing that 2 weeks later, a 2nd hurricane would hit the same region, incurring the same type of damage, putting the area into a humanitarian crisis. MCC responds again and continues to respond to relief. The further response is livestock replacement, crop replanting support, and other supports that go through the church in Honduras, Nicaragua, and El Salvador. As Brad was chatting with me as I prepared, he offered a scripture that I would like to share. John 1, 4-5. "In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome this." As I walked through the Mukuru community just outside of Nairobi, Kenya, darkness settled over me. The next slide is coming. This was a very low-income community. Housing, our MCC reps told us it was 1 million people that live within this slum. Numbers range, but up to 1 million people live within this slum. People trying to etch out an existence. As we walked into the community, feelings of hopelessness, poverty, darkness clouded my thoughts. I thought, it was so hard to imagine how people living in this kind of circumstance and context survive. But we kept walking, and light began to shine in the darkness. The Kenyan Mennonite Church began meeting as a church in the slum to offer hope, light, and love in this very challenging circumstance. Out of the church came the idea to start a school. The leadership, the teachers, the mentors of the school all live within the Mukuru community and are working to offer hope and a future for the children. Indeed, they know how to help their neighbors. They know how to best help. The children come into the schoolyard daily. It is an enclosed schoolyard. For many, it is not only the education that is beneficial here. but the safety that the school provides. Mothers are working. Sometimes mothers are not there, fathers are not there. Kids are on their own, often. So children are left alone and vulnerable. So not only does the school provide an opportunity for education in the future, the school provides safety in a group of people that care about them, that can protect them. This was a touching experience when we walked into the school. I felt a little bit, I don't know the word, embarrassed? I'm not sure. It was a big, people were very excited that we were visiting. And I just thought we are just here to see what the work that MCC is doing and how it impacts you. But these children and the teachers were so pleased to have us come. And the reason they were so pleased is that our presence indicated that they were not forgotten. And they will no longer be forgotten, not in my heart. So the teachers that were hired, most of them initially had grade 12 education. But this is also one of the supports of MCC in this project, that the teachers were educated to achieve their teaching credential. So now, not only are the families of those teachers benefiting and their families, but also the students benefit for accredited teachers in the area. MCC also engages often not only in relief, so many of these children come to the school, they receive breakfast, and they receive a lunch, so food aid. And then through the education, they receive their education and a hope for the future that they can, at some point, if they choose and are able, to pursue university or higher education. Not only that, MCC continues to try to build capacity in the wider community in building life skills. So also at the school, there is an agricultural life skills program offered, that children learn how to grow their own food. And they also learn, in the top left, learn how to take care of chickens and how to feed them, and then how to pick the eggs, and then how to market the eggs, giving them life skills for the future. And within all of this project, MCC's piecework is integral and intertwined into all of the work. Children who come from an environment of insecurity or violence or whatever the impacts are, they come to an environment where they learn how to talk, where they learn how to share with one another, where they learn ways of dealing with conflict that don't involve violence. The second project I want to share with you today is one out of Colombia. So Estamina, Colombia is located in the San Juan River region. MCC was invited into Colombia in 2002 by both the MB and the MC churches because of an increased military action driving the drug trade and human rights violations. MCC's engagement in Colombia includes relief to internally displaced people and refugees, food vouchers, sustainable development, and peace clubs. Many communities only have access to Estamina by boat. And if you can imagine, that boat holds, I think there's about 5 people on that boat. We had the opportunity to experience what a riverboat feels like. This was a riverboat that was about 4 times the length of this. It held about 30 people. And we had the opportunity to go into the riverboat and travel up and down the river of the San Juan region. As we were doing that, MCC staff were not the only ones that knew we were in this very remote part of Colombia. It is in the Choco region, where the entire region is governed by armed groups. There's also 17 MV churches along this river, which offer light and hope to the communities. So as we traveled up and down the rivers, our boat held 3 of the MB pastors, and we were quite literally under the protection of Christ as we traveled up and down these rivers. At the time, we did not know it, but we were being watched as people continued to watch the work of the church and our partners in this region. Fagrotes is a project that was started in 2009. It's an agricultural project, teaching farmers to grow alternative crops to cocoa or cocaine. The project started as farmers that were growing cocaine, started joining the churches. And the church, who was MCC's partners, decided that they needed to have a response, an alternative for these members of their churches. So the project started with food security, growing rice. So they started providing seed so that the farmers could grow rice, so they could provide for their families and deal with the fact that they did not have enough food. That was good. And then the farmer said, but now we need a cash crop. So MCC and the partner with Fagrotes started growing cacao, which is cocoa. And it has been successful. However, not without conflict. So in the next slide, you'll see a picture of a building. So this is the Fagrotes rice processing plant. And the tented area is a cacao or cocoa drying room. This project has not come without conflict. Fagrotes partners with 120 farmers currently. Most of these farmers previously were a part of the drug trade, and they grew cocoa. But growing for the armed groups is very difficult and very dangerous for the farmers. And when they found that they had an alternative, they were very happy to try and to make a living for themselves and provide for their families in ways that could contribute to the betterment of the community. So these farmers have begun making a way. However, the armed groups found out about this cash crop that they were growing, the cocoa, because it had actually started providing a bit of revenue for these families. And so they came and demanded that Fagrotes pay a war tax because of the revenue. The church said no. Clear of their values, they would not support any of the paramilitary gang activity, as they are for peace, for the people, for the community. The armed group members are very angry that they would not pay and threatened Pastor Rutulio and Pastor Havas and left. Expectantly and very surprised, they phoned unexpectedly and very surprised, these armed group members phoned back later. And they said that Fagrotes could continue the work. 2 members of their armed group came to the farm to apologize and ask for forgiveness for involving the church in the conflict. And since that day, they have had no problems. The armed groups will not know problems. They're always aware of the threat, but they have not been prevented from doing the work. And what the armed groups had to say was that their change of heart was a result of their investigation. They had looked into the churches. They had looked into the work that they have done, as many of their family members benefited from the work of the church, benefited from the food that was offered when the river floods, benefited from the food security and the rice that is provided to their families. And so they stepped down and asked for forgiveness. I'm not sure, I did not actually know what a cocoa plant looked like, but the cocoa plant is here in this photo. And this cocoa plant, with a few ingredients, produces the product cocaine that's exported from Colombia to North America, Europe, and sold illegally, with no benefit for the people in Colombia. All the monies do not benefit. So I wanted to just show you a little bit about the rice processing plant, which has been a beautiful expression of Christ's love and peace in Colombia. This is the rice processing plant. Rice is processed here. It's like a cooperative, so if there's farmers in the congregation, it's a cooperative, and it's like an elevator. So farmers produce the rice. Fagrotes invites them to bring the rice there. They market it. They send it into Istmina by boat, and they sell it for them so that they can make a livelihood. And the next photo is a picture of a cacao tree, a cocoa tree. So cocoa beans are grown on a tree. And this process is not a short process. Years and years of growing and producing the cocoa pods. In the next photo, you can see a cocoa pod close up. These farmers now make $200 a month. They farm about 2.5 acres of land. Each of these cocoa pods produces 20 to 30 seeds. This product is now being marketed and sold. And hopefully one day, Fagrotes would like to see it branded and increase revenue to provide for the community. The vision that Fagrotes is that it will become a self-sustaining, and then it will actually generate funds that can be used for the good of the community. Next slide. They're planning to start their own brand of rice and chocolate. The impacts of this program are substantial. Dignity for the farmers, supporting their families and communities in a way that is building into a future for the Choco region. Not engaging in supporting the armed conflict or growing illegal crops. They are doing work locally, and they're doing it together as they know how to do it best. And the peace work that is done in this region is profound. It's touching. I honestly didn't understand peace work until I came into this area and had the opportunity to visit. It is not work that is done without risk. Pastors, farmers, community advocates continue to engage and share Christ's love with those around them through the gospel, but also through taking care of people's needs. One other village that we visited was in Bebedo. And we visited another MB church, but out of that church, they run peace clubs. This one was called the House of Hope. There was about 30 kids there on that day. Oh, previous slide. Just with a handshake. There was 30 kids that day. And these kids were sitting together, they were sharing, they were visiting, and we walked in the door, and they turned and looked at us. And one small girl in particular, her name is Emily. She came up to me. She spoke Spanish. I do not. But we managed to communicate in ways through games. So we played X and O's, and we sat together. And she introduced to me the names of all the children that she that were around us in that moment. This peace club comes out of a community where a few months before, armed groups came into the community and opened gunfire right in front of the church. The kids were there, and they were quickly escorted into the church. Violence is a part of these kids every day. It has broken down the social fabrics of the community. As we visited with the partner that runs the Peace Club, she said, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." In these peace clubs, they get together, they play with the children, they love the children, they smile at the children. They teach the children how to greet each other, how to acknowledge the daily realities of violence and the pressures it brings to the children, to the youth, to the breakdown of the family and the community well-being. So as we look at all of the ways that MCC works together, the relief, the sustainable development, the peace work, it all intertwines into the ministry of MCC's work. What I have really learned over the last number of years with MCC and having the opportunity to travel to both Kenya and Colombia is that MCC's work is intentional. It is long-term. We have just recently celebrated our 100th birthday, an organization that has been sharing the love of Christ for 100 years. It started in southern Russia, in the Ukraine, and it continues today all over the world. And I am honored to be a part of it. It has changed me. As I see and I've seen how it changes people's lives, taking care of their needs, feeding them, helping them to build capacity, to survive, and to hope for better futures. Not only does MCC work internationally, that's the majority of our work, but MCC also works domestically in Canada and in BC. Oftentimes people don't know about what we do locally, so I thought I'd take a few moments to share. MCC runs an end abuse program. So for domestic violence for women, we hold groups to help people to acknowledge and to learn about the abuses that they experience and to heal. We also host, it's called a home improvement program for male offenders that have come through the judicial system and other men that decide that they want to learn how to improve the quality and the health of their relationships. It's a profound program where people share of their pain and receive healing and are able to continue to not build better futures only for themselves, but also for their children. Our homeless prevention outreach program. Not only do we offer Thursday night barbecue meals every day, every week of the year, but we offer a rent bank for people who are in housing crisis. People can apply and receive an interest-free loan to pay for their rent, to keep them housed. As you know, when people lose their housing, the spiral begins. So that is also a part of our local program. Indigenous Neighbors Program. Simply to continue to engage and improve our relationships with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. To listen well, to hear, and to build relationship. That is the focus. And refugee sponsorship. MCC continues to engage in welcoming our neighbor, to be good neighbors. And so refugee sponsorship is not new to this congregation. We continue to welcome people into Canada and help them to adjust, to learn, to grow, and to thrive in Canada. Also in our local program, we have our Material Resource Center, which is not unfamiliar to you. We create comforters there. We put them together and we package them to prepare them for sending internationally. Relief kits, hygiene kits, school kits are either dropped off there or made there and prepared to send to those around the world. So in short, a little snapshot about what MCC is doing today. Thank you for your invitation. I wish we could have been in person. When Alex invited me, there was numerous people in this church that I was hoping that I would have the opportunity to reconnect with. We will do that another day. So for MCC, often people say, so what can we do? How do we respond? In all the ways that you have been responding. You can continue to pray for us. Pray for our partners. Pray for those around the world that are vulnerable and displaced. Learn. We can never stop learning. Everywhere, every place that I've visited, every program that I've heard from, every area director that I've heard from, I continue to learn about the context around the world, about the political intricacies, about the complicated lives that people live. Continue to learn and be open. And pray. Pray together with us. Thank you so much for this time. And I pray for God's peace and grace and His Spirit to be so powerfully working within this congregation. Thank you so much.